Welcome to this week's episode of Does That Make Sense? Today's episode is called Healing with Horses. Antoinette, do you remember that movie called The Horse Whisperer?
With Robert Redford. Hello.
Yes, that's the one. We've actually tracked down a horse whisperer from the southern highlands of New South Wales, Australia, who not only is a healer herself, but she offers a form of healing with her horses.
I believe it's called Equine Therapy, and these horses actually perform Reiki healings, Amanda. Let's find out more about it.
So welcome to the show, Soo Woods from Eureka Horse Wisdom. And so we'd love to get a little bit of your background and your connection with horses. When did all this start for you?
Well, I believe I was born loving animals, but my mother introduced me to horse riding when I was 5 years old, thinking that it would give me something occasional to do. Even up until her passing earlier this year, she never accepted the depth of my connection with them, the understanding that I have with them, and the way that they can serve us and help us and support us.
Would you consider yourself a bit of a horse whisperer? Would you say that?
I would, and I have been called that before. One of my gifts, which I would love to be able to teach others, but I can't because it's a gift, is that I have an ability to just get inside a horse's head. I know what they're thinking, I know what they're feeling. It guides me in my interactions with them a lot. And there's certainly components of it that I do teach and that I can help others with. But yeah, I'm a horse whisperer. It doesn't mean whispering into their ears. It means understanding them at root level.
No, I have to say my favourite one, my probably top 5 movies that I love of all time is the movie The Horse Whisperer. With Robert Redford from many years ago.
And it was a great movie. I look at it through my lens of like, yeah, that was trained and that wouldn't happen. I ruin it through my glasses.
Horses are incredible. Now, I first learnt about you through a dear friend of mine who actually participated in one of your therapy sessions with your amazing horses. And she said that while she was participating, she had one of your horses that was nudging at her jawline quite gently. And I believe it was you that actually asked her, is there something going on with your jawline? Have you got a sore throat? Is there something going on? And at the time or that day, there was nothing that was going on. And it wasn't until the next morning she woke up with horrendous toothache where she needed to go to the dentist and have it all sorted. So when she told me that, I was like, wow, I need to get Soo onto our podcast. So how does that work with the horses? So when you do your therapy sessions, what actually is involved? What takes place?
Okay, look, there's lots of variations on that, and it's really difficult to describe what a session looks like, because for somebody like your friend who came for more of a spiritual or embodied adult session, it takes one form. If I've got kids on the spectrum or coming to learn self-confidence or basic life skills, it takes another form. But to talk about the fact that horses pick up on energy, I don't believe that they actually see us in human form. I think they see us in energy form, and they see all the energy that's rolling around inside us. So what happened with your friend isn't unique. You know, I've had other people come suffering bursitis, for example, and the horses will concentrate their energy, their faces, onto the space that they need to go to. And sometimes it can be one horse, sometimes it can be multiple at the same time. And on other occasions, I've had horses come through one after another, but all go to the same place. And this lady that I'm thinking of right now who came with bursitis, the horses focused in on her shoulder where the bursitis was. And she walked away going, it's gone. It's completely clear.
Wow.
So they are born Reiki masters. They do channel energy in the typical way that we view Reiki. But so my understanding and my belief is that that's how they work with energy. They can see it and they channel it through as well.
Does someone need to have an experience with horses to participate?
Absolutely not. And sometimes actually it's better if they don't. Because people often bring their preconceived ideas or what they've been taught before.
Yeah.
We can work with people. I've worked with people who are too fearful to go in with the horses. You don't have to go in with a horse if you're not ready to do so. In the same way that I've worked with people with disabilities, I find a way to make it work.
And the horses would pick up on the fear as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, and generally speaking, if a horse senses fear in another, they will become fearful themselves.
So you also offer another form of therapy called Equine Reiki. Can you explain how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So all horses are born Reiki masters. They're all very capable, and they all enjoy channeling Reiki energy to offer healing to whoever's open to receiving it. I'm a Reiki practitioner, and so the herd and I offer sessions where people can remain standing, they can sit on a chair, or they can lie on a massage table, or any combination of each through a session. Sessions are normally 50 minutes long, it's normally enough, and it's done in a space where the horses have complete free will as to who steps up, how many of them step up. So I've had some sessions where I've got like 10 horses around a table, and I've had other sessions where there's maybe only one. I'm a big believer in whatever needs to happen, happens.
And what do the horses do during these Reiki sessions? Do they just, if somebody's laying down on a massage table, are they just walking around them, or?
No, they're normally standing. They're normally standing still. I mean, they might move around a bit, but they're generally standing still, and they're either focusing their head towards a part of the person's body, or sometimes they'll come in and they'll brush the person's body or sort of nuzzle them a little bit with their mouth. And it's like they're trying to move the energy around. They're trying to shift the energy of whatever's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Never heard of that before, but it sounds amazing. I'd love to try it.
I've had Reiki done before. I love Reiki. Never had it done by
a horse.
Take it from a herd of 500-kilo horses.
No.
That would be incredible. It would be just an incredible experience. Seeing it happen, but feeling it happen are completely two different things, I think. That would be incredible.
I had one lady who did a session a couple of months ago now, and she said, I think it was for hours afterwards, everything she looked at, she could just see the energy of it. So everything was moving. So she'd look at a tree, but it wouldn't be a solid tree. It was just energy moving, sort of in the vague shape of a tree. The car was energy moving. Yeah. So she had this real awareness of energy and the fact that we are all energy come through.
And this type of therapy is called equine therapy. Do you train the horses to have this, to work with it, or you, as you said, you think that they have the skill already? So
absolutely not. You can't train a horse to do something like this. I believe all horses are born capable of doing it, but it very much depends on the environment that they're in and how safe they feel as to how much they offer and what they offer. So my horses, I've currently got 12 in the herd. They live as a herd. They live out as much as possible. So I keep them as naturally as possible within a domesticated environment. But, my paddocks are 20 acres big, and they can run, they eat, they play, they sleep. And they have me looking over them. So they feel as safe as horses can. And it's actually perfectly common for all of my horses to lie down at the same time to rest.
Wow.
Whereas if you go to your typical horse establishment, you don't often see horses lying down, and particularly when they're kept on their own. So a lot of people come here and they're like, wow. Whereas here it's norm.
Sorry, is that because they feel safe? Is that why
Absolutely.
they? Yes.
Absolutely. When a horse does lie down, they like to have another horse standing nearby as a sort of keeping guard for them. I have had situations where I've had everyone down and no one standing. And I post it as trick questions on social media. I go, so what's going on here? What's odd? People often don't get it. Yeah, they need to be relaxed.
That's incredible. If there was a listener that was interested in participating, what would be the outcomes that they may expect?
Okay, and that comes down to how old they are and why they're coming. So I've had some people with disabilities come just to have really pleasurable experiences. and they probably do get other side benefits as well, but they come to do something different, to get that interaction with big, kind animals. I've had many kids who come through to learn life skills, as I mentioned earlier on. So they might come to develop self-confidence, self-esteem. Emotional regulation is something that is being needed more and more, particularly in the current climate. And so the horses, I'll jump sideways and talk about that for a moment. The horses have exactly the same nervous system structure as we do. They're mammals, just as we are. Mm-hmm. But they have much greater resonance surfaces. They have much greater hearts and guts. So their ability to co-regulate our nervous system is much easier for them than it is for us to co-regulate them, simply because of the physical size. So it can go both ways. But if, for example, I've got a kid who's emotionally distressed, they've had a horrible week at school or whatever, and they come and they are just in the presence of a couple of big horses, that in itself can be enough to calm them. Wow. So the emotional aspect is a big one. Like I said, the developing skills like self-confidence, self-esteem comes in through different activities with the horses. The sessions I love doing most are from women generally, who come to learn more about themselves. They come to learn why stuff is going on in their lives, how they can shift it. And we do that through exploration of them, exploring their inner landscape through prompts by me and from the horses. So to go back to your example of the person you mentioned, we might be exploring somebody's inner landscape and a horse might come along and bump them somewhere. And that might be like, okay, what does it mean? What's happening? Why is that going? So I've had people have spiritual awakenings. I've had people work out their life purpose.
Wow.
I've had people, it can be really deep. It's not always that deep. It's always positive, always beneficial.
And I guess it would also be dependent on the needs of the individual at the time. So of what they need to work on at the time.
Absolutely. And the horses, that's also where the horses they don't muck around. They go, this is where you need to go first.
Wow.
So we can go incredible. And go, I want to work on this. And they go, And they do it to me as well. Like I'm always planning and I'm always prepared for sessions, and I can go in with a plan, and quite often it gets kicked sideways by the horses. We have to do something different. The other thing that I'd add there actually is that over the years, I've had many reports from people where they say a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, they will have a light bulb moment. They'll wake up in the middle of the night and they'll go, oh, I've got it. And so the effect of whatever's happened while they're here sort of keeps rolling and just has this delayed effect.
Yeah. Well, how long have you been operating Eureka Horse Wisdom?
I moved down from Sydney in 2014. I bought 100 acres of land, and I then had to build facilities and a house. So the business sort of has been operational since 2014, on more of the skeleton level to start with. And then building was completed early 2017. So 4 and a bit years now in full swing, along with fire and drought and COVID and who knows what else.
I know. It's been quite a challenging year for the past 2 years, I must say, for everybody. Now, do people need to go and see you, or do you go and see them?
No, I don't take the horses off the land for the fact that I need them to feel safe.
Yep.
So people do need to come here.
What sort of wisdoms do you believe come from horses? And can you talk a little bit about that connection between people and man and horse from going back? There's always been that deep connection between man and horse.
There has, and I think for a long time, horses have been used to the benefit of man.
Yes.
And they've often been deeply loved and appreciated in that time.
Yes.
But I think that we've entered a new era now where horses are being seen more truly for who they are and what they can offer by way of the sorts of things we've already talked about today.
Yes.
For me, their primary skills are teaching us to be human beings instead of human doings. They're masters
Right.
of living in the present moment. You know, they only worry about what's happening right now. If they're grazing and something scares them, they'll startle, they'll go into a fear response until they're away from whatever it is that scared them, and then they return to grazing. Whereas as people, we tend to get fearful, then we listen to mainstream media, then something else happens, and we stay in this upward spiral and we never come down.
Yeah.
And it's really unhealthy to be like that. So they're really good at teaching us how we should be, how to be calm and peaceful most of the time.
Do you think that some people are more skilled at tapping into animals? Is that your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think some people probably are more, but I think it's probably those people who can love unconditionally and live without judging, and have an awareness of being calm and present, and therefore they can meet the animals where the animals are or where the animals want to be. Because even dogs and cats who have been through shelters and stuff, they want that safe, calm home. That's all they want.
Yeah.
And you speak about that you do other things, you are a healer as well. So do you integrate what you do as well as with what you do with the horses?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the other modalities that I have, they're all holistic and alternative. So I'm a Reiki practitioner, I'm trauma informed, and I'm a trauma practitioner through a modality called embodied processing. I'm also a root cause therapist, which works at getting to the underlying cause or the root cause of people's, I'll call it struggle, that can show up in many different ways. Things like the Reiki and the embodied processing, I absolutely take out with the horses as and when needed. Root cause doesn't go out there. It's not appropriate for it to do so.
Okay.
And typically, how many people would be in a session?
I prefer working one-on-one because I feel I can give people everything by remaining focused like that. I do small groups. I've done a few small family units, and I sometimes work with kids, sort of groups of 4 or 6 kids. I ran a program with PCYC earlier this year, and I've also got a similar group. Actually, no, I've got 16 kids coming from Steiner next year that will split into 2 smaller groups. The biggest group I've had was 25 corporate people coming to learn all about leadership, which is another thing that the horses teach well. But personally, I prefer one-on-one.
When you say one-on-one, is that with the horses, like one-on-one with the horses, or?
Sorry, yeah, no, one-on-one, me and one client, and then between 1 and 12 horses, depending on the session.
Okay.
And with a typical session that you may do, can you give us an example of what will happen? So with a typical session, you go into is it a paddock? What do you do?
That's such a difficult question to answer because I don't have a typical session.
I'm trying to get a vision of how it works.
So sometimes we will walk out into the paddock. Sometimes we will take horses into the stables. Sometimes we will take horses into one of the work areas and we'll work with obstacles and poles and things. That's more for the kids that are learning life skills. So it takes many different forms. But I guess my standards start with everybody, regardless of age, ability, physical abilities, is that I teach people basic breath work. I teach them how to use their diaphragm or their belly on the in-breath and how to make the out-breath longer than the in, because that triggers our parasympathetic nervous system into a state of calm. If we do that, before we go into the space with 1 or more horses, we've created safe space to enter with.
Okay.
And it's something that all horse people should do, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And when somebody is having a therapy session with yourself and your horses, do the horses go to the individuals? So
the way that I encourage it to work is that we work with whichever horse or horses step up. Sometimes the horses will walk up to a client, sometimes they'll walk away, which is information in itself.
Wow.
And sometimes multiple of them come up at the same time. So, I've had sessions where I've had, the herd was slightly bigger than 13 or 15 horses, and not a single horse came up to the person.
Wow.
And it was what that person needed in that moment. It was
I
all
see.
about, why aren't they coming up? And it was all about, I think from memory, it was about they needed to learn to stop and have downtime. They were running so fast, they didn't know how to pause. And the horses were like, well, we're not coming near that.
Yeah.
But the learning for the person was how important it is to be able to find stop. So there isn't really a right or a wrong, you know, it is what it is. And certainly on some occasions, I do have to say to to one or more of the horses, like, come on, we need to do this. I persuade them to come. So it's important that I have a good working relationship with them for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And do you have any major or significant transformative stories that will never, ever leave you of what has happened whilst you've been working?
Yeah, a few. I had a little 10-year-old boy came to me while I was still up in Sydney, actually. I ran a yard in Sydney for 10 years before I came down here, and Equine Therapy sort of began to creep in up there. But this kid came along, and after his third or fourth session with me, his mum emailed me and she said, my son talks to 3 people in the world. Now, I had no way of knowing that because he'd turn up and talk to me nonstop for half an hour.
Wow. Okay.
So that was like, okay, the horses are bringing him out. And then only a few months ago, I have a little 9-year-old who comes. And when mum came to pick him up at the end, she had her toddler on her hip, who is mute. And they walked into the stables and this toddler started saying the names of the horses.
Wow.
So it's moments
goosebumps.
like that, you just go, yeah, it does happen. And then other sort of longer term outcomes. The first that comes to mind was one that just brought me such joy. I had a 15-year-old boy who again started coming when I was up in Sydney. He then continued to come for a while after I came down here. And over the course of a few years, he morphed from being this desperately shy kid who wouldn't leave his bedroom. He started coming to see me to try and encourage some social interaction and life outside the bedroom. He was on the spectrum. He couldn't stand people raising their voice. He couldn't stand loud noise. And he has now got a driving license, works full time, did a TAFE course, and basically his whole world opened up because of the skills and the growth that he experienced.
Amazing.
It must make you feel incredibly proud and honoured to be able to offer this to families.
Absolutely, it's heartwarming, and but it's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help as many people as I can.
Going back to the land, you have your horses, but you also have the environment as well. So I could imagine that it would be just completely beautiful and calming.
It's a beautiful block of land. It's the energy was here when I bought it, but the way that I've crafted the facilities to work with the land, basically. So the driveway sort of meanders and sweeps up across the property rather than going in a straight line, passes through a wetland area. There are birds everywhere, so much of the time. And a lot of people say as soon as they come in through the front gates, they feel the sense of calm. So certainly the energy of Eureka is a part of the package of what we offer.
Amazing.
So that's why I encourage people, even for the other line of work that I do, I still encourage people to come if they can.
Well, I'm actually feeling extremely calm.
Yes,
Soo?
you are very calm. So you've got such a calm. I noticed that myself.
I can be silly.
We are on Zoom and we are looking at you, and I have this sense of calm and ease, and I just don't feel like I have any problems.
We're feeling very present. Yeah, it sounds like a great girls' trip. I think you and I should go.
I would love to. I would absolutely love to.
We should talk about the location exactly and how people sort of could book in and how that all works. So what do you usually
good
recommend?
question. So no accommodation on site yet. Down the track, I'd like to offer retreats, sort of 5 to 7 day retreats. At the moment, the best way to book is by going through the website, eurekahorsewisdom.com.au. There is a link there where people can jump on and make a booking, be taken to my calendar, and do it without needing to come through me. Oftentimes people have questions and want to discuss what's going to be most suitable, and so emailing me is the preferred option, simply because I'm so busy during the day. I don't often have time to pick up the phone or take a call. I'm in the Southern Highlands in New South Wales. There is a lot of accommodation around, a lot of B&Bs and farm stays and places for people to be. So if anybody was visiting the area, that would be an easy option.
Okay. And we'll include all the links to your website on the episode details. It's been an absolute pleasure, Soo, and thank you so much for coming on. Does that make sense?
Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thanks, Soo.